Dan?
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but I teach in Catoosa County, Georgia at Lakeview Fort Oglethorpe High School.
All right, so welcome to week 3 of our Explore EquatIO webinar series. Introducing to you two wonderful people here in the EdTech community, and they represent different districts. They're also part of our Text Help Titan group, and I am excited. Remember, my name's Louis Shanafelt, and you'll notice Ryan Graham is not on the call today. He has a Easter holiday that he's celebrating. So instead of canceling this outright, we thought, why not invite some people that are actually working with remote learning with their school districts, and they can speak to how they're using EquatIO currently with either their students, and the other person I'm going to introduce you to is Marilu. We'll let her go first on how she's using EquatIO from a district coaching digital tool learning type perspective. So I want to welcome Marilu. So if you could, Marilu, just introduce yourself real quick to the audience.
Hi, my name is Marilu Deal, and I work for the Ottawa Catholic School Board in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I'm a grade 7 through 12 math consultant, where I am fortunate enough to work with teachers in the district and help them learn how to use all the different tools and how to best support their students, whether they need accessibility or just help showing their thinking.
Awesome. Thank you, Marilu. And I've known Dan for a little bit. We'll let him introduce himself. Dan, take it away.
I'm Dan Lyons. I teach math at Lakeview Fort Oglethorpe High School in Catoosa County, Georgia. This is my 19th year. I'm a career switcher. I came in from engineering, and the only place I've ever taught. And I've back in goodness, I don't even remember what year it was. We started looking at doing more and more things digitally, moving toward one-to-one. And so I went looking one day for a way to put properly formatted math material in a Google form, and I stumbled on this thing called GMath, and then it turned into EquatIO 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I've been using it since the day it rolled out, and I'm kind of the building level, maybe county level people who kind of knows how to use it.
Yeah. So Marilu and Dan, like I said, I've kind of known them and reached out to them through Twitter. They've given me great advice as I've come aboard with Text Help. And like Dan said, he's been using a tool that we kind of converted into EquatIO several years ago. And both of these individuals, like myself, are former classroom teachers. Dan still is. So we always were looking for solutions in a digital one-to-one learning environment and how we can bring math and STEM content into the classroom. So I'm going to kind of be your host today. I'm not going to really probably go through some of the questions that we've received unless there's time at the end. We'll try and jump into some questions. However, I really wanted these two, real pioneers to EquatIO to talk about kind of how they're using this product in a remote learning instance. So how have you, Marilu, used EquatIO for remote learning so far? What's worked? What hasn't? What have you learned? Kind of just speak in broad terms about how EquatIO's helped.
Well, EquatIO, like Dan, I've been using it for probably 3 years right now, and pushing it out to teachers across our board, not only on our board, other boards as well. Anytime I meet anybody who teaches math, it's definitely one of the tools I suggest to them. For remote learning, we've really focused on helping teachers use the EquatIO mathspace feature, since you can push assignments directly out to students, and we use Hapara Workspace for our particular board, and it's very easy to create the assignment in mathspace and then share the link with students. It creates their own copy, all those different things. They can give feedback, and you have that loop that happens between student and teacher. So that the teachers that are using it like that very much, because they can use it as a quick exit card, anything where they can have an opportunity to interact with the students, as opposed to just, here's a question, do it, and here's the answer, check your answer. They get that personalized feedback feature.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of my favorites too with mathspace, is having that loop where you can communicate back and forth with students. Dan, how about yourself in terms of remote learning? You working with students, communicating with them. What's worked for you? What hasn't? What have you learned in using EquatIO so far?
Ever since we went one-to-one a couple of years ago, I kind of drank the Kool-Aid at that moment and started going digitally. Nearly everything I do with my students is digital now, so the transition for me wasn't so extreme. I've been telling my colleagues, for years, I've kind of stopped using paper, just use EquatIO, and I show them how they can use, the Google form data in the Google Sheet, that EquatIO, and as enhancements have been made to EquatIO over the 3 years that we've had it, you see that you can now show work, and you can embed a graph, and you can show multiple representations in one place. So, showing them that you can do anything on EquatIO that you could have them do on paper, it's just something that now can be transferred digitally. And I find that the students are more deliberate when they're doing it digitally. In order to do this, though, you have to teach the students how to use it on the front end. And that's
Right.
what a lot of people struggle with when they're transitioning to digital learning. If they don't already have a basis, a background in it,
Hmm.
then it's really hard to jump in with both feet. So,
Right.
on day one with Chromebooks, I tell them to open up a math space and just tool around with it a little bit. I show them the basics. And, the first few weeks, I'm kind of walking around the classroom when they're doing something on EquatIO, showing them, you need to make sure you do it this way. Now that we're at home doing our learning, I might push out a video that says, hey, we're doing synthetic substitution. You're showing your work, and, numbers have to be
Right.
spaced and lined up in columns. Let me show you how to do this in EquatIO so that you can make it look right. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit extra there. But as far as just adapting what I do in the classroom to digital, I've kind of already I was doing it this way in the classroom to begin with. So now
Right.
it's just a matter of making sure my students know how to do what they need to do.
Right. It's interesting because I know Dan and I've spoken off the air, and he's having teachers, circle back to him now saying, almost like, I wish I had listened to Dan back when he started using this tool. And I found that too, and working with the tool that, not everyone jumped into that cold water, so to speak, like Dan did back in the day. And now we're kind of forced to, find out what tools are out there, what's available. A real quick story on my end before this little TV show, if you will. I had my daughter come in, and she's using Canvas for LMS, and her teacher is not using EquatIO, which disappoints me highly. And she's having to plot coordinate planes on a grid. So I, of course, told my daughter to load the EquatIO for LMS LTI. And I said, I want you to respond to her and show her your coordinate planes using the Desmos graphing tool and send it back to the teacher. But don't tell her how you did it. Because I want her to respond and say, how'd you do that?
Nice.
Because she hasn't been really willing to take that plunge, if you will. So we'll see if she gets a response from her teacher. I'm hopeful she does. But I want her teacher to start using it as well because it is available. So the next question here is, what tools or features have you been using to convert your classroom activities for remote learning? So Marilu, what tools and features have you been?
A lot of our teachers, we had smart boards in every single classroom. So lots of math teachers had lots of lessons already prepared in that environment. So a lot of them are using Screencastify to record themselves completing those lessons and then sharing them with their students to kind of help them along the way. I've been really encouraging teachers to use the Screencastify along with the mathspace feature, because you do the same kind of thing and it kind of limits you to a single example instead of creating a 20-minute video, which I imagine some students don't necessarily watch all of it, whereas a single 3 to 4 minute little video, you'll probably get a lot more uptake on that. So I've been kind of encouraging that. And then taking a lot of those traditional formative quizzes and different things like that. And as Dan had mentioned, using all the wonderful features in Google Forms. Because there's so much. It used to be simply just the multiple choice or whatever, but now you can get short answers. You have the ability to insert the math space right in there to show their work. Students can get instant feedback on many of those questions and know whether or not they're on the right track. And you as a teacher, it comes back to you all beautifully in a spreadsheet, so you can quickly eyeball and see where kids are and whether or not that concept has kind of stuck or if they need a little bit more help. The other thing, it was you that said Desmos. The ability to embed Desmos straight into all of these things, particularly for grades 7 through 12, connecting that whole visual and everything else along with it. It just gives you the full package in terms of being able to elicit student thinking, which is ultimately what our goal is right now, and give them the opportunity to get some feedback.
Right. Yeah, that's really important. You mentioned all those things. I know Dan's going to be probably hitting Google Forms and Google. He's shared stuff with me before in the past. So, Dan, what kind of tools and features have you been using, and kind of convert those activities that you would used to see your students, obviously face to face, but now have had to convert? What have you been using?
I'm definitely using Screencastify. I'll make a Google slideshow, and I'll show examples in EquatIO. I'll put a math space up there that shows everything that they need to do with the steps and everything, and talk through it as I click through my slideshow. And then I'll give them a Google form, and I've got one here that I can share. Do I need to click share screen here?
Yeah, go ahead. And is it showing up?
It is now, I think so. So here's a Google form that I made, and this is something I was going to push out today. We're starting polynomial division, so I took them through a short slideshow, and now I've just got a couple of questions on here, just so they can kind of take what I talked about in the slideshow and apply them here. And I was able to use EquatIO to make all of these, the division sign there and the fraction there that you can't do otherwise. Able to make a little bit of a word problem, and then a short answer element there, and that way they can. I don't have them responding using EquatIO so much right there. But what I do, if I can share again, here's a previous one. Sometimes our EquatIO answers don't show up. I can see up here that the URL is in there, but for whatever reason, it doesn't show up. But here's one that did. So I asked them to do some polynomial multiplication and show their work. So here I can see their work, and my answer would be up here. It's just not showing up. Sometimes I have to close it, reopen it. But I can see their work and compare it to what they've done, compared to what I've done, and give them a score on it. And I told them, I want you to show your work. I want you to show me that you're using the distributive property and combining like terms. And if I get a kid that doesn't show me that, I go back to them and I say, I want you to resubmit this and show your work. So I can still get quality work from them. And I'm a spreadsheet guy, and I'm very honest with my students about. Was I not sharing there when I was showing my spreadsheet?
No, I don't see it.
Yeah, we couldn't see it.
I have a deep and abiding love for spreadsheets, and I have for years. So
there it comes. There it is.
I like to do little tricks with spreadsheets and whatnot. But I've decided with my Algebra 2 students, we don't have a state test in Algebra 2. And having spreadsheet skills is way more relevant than having skills with, say, third and fourth degree polynomial functions or converting from standard form to vertex form. So I tell them, let's make a spreadsheet that will handle this algorithm for you. And use it. Use it when you take a test. Use it when you do these problems. That's just a better skill altogether. So I try to teach them how to make spreadsheets and whatnot. But here's an example of someone who showed their work using EquatIO, and I can see their distributive property and then combining like terms, and I can compare what they did with what I did, and it helps me see their logic instead of just seeing an answer or just giving them multiple choice, and I can see what kind of mistakes they're making, and I can go in and I can kind of help them diagnose what their problem is.
Right. And I know from Dan and I have speaking before too, he shared some of those Google Sheets with me and some presentations I was doing just because I needed some raw student data. And Dan was saying how quick it is for him just to scroll a column to see, that immediate feedback, to be able to see exactly, if the student didn't really understand a certain column, you can tell awfully quickly by exporting those responses into a sheet. So, and you both mentioned the Screencastify tool, and even though you both didn't say it, but we all know this, that teachers have a hard enough time teaching all the standards, let alone teaching folks the tool, how to use the tool. So using a Screencastify type tool or Camtasia or Snagit, one of those type of screen recording tools is really, really a helpful tool to be able to kind of flip that classroom and to be able to show students what you want and your expectations to return work to them. So
I just wanted to show, so Dan had showed his form where it had the multiple choice, but I have one here that I can share that is that shows the other questions as well, all in the same spot. One of my colleagues she created a short PD session for teachers to share with them to help them
Okay.
get started on using the EquatIO, and this is the form that she
Oh,
created.
sure.
So I will go to that. All right.
Here we go.
You're able to see, all right, so this is a sample quiz. So again, determine the equation. So there's your multiple choice. We use Desmos along with
Yep.
the graph.
Yep.
Same thing using mathspace to come up with the image that we included there. Evaluate, putting in the short answer. A list question where they have to put them in order, so not necessarily multiple choice.
Right.
So we basically took almost all of the question types and included them. And then here, what is the equation of the quadratic function? Inserting a short answer. And then down here, we call it a show your thinking question, where they would actually input their answer using the mathspace. The other thing that we've had teachers do is with the multiple choice, once they make their selection, we have a little short answer box below it where they can explain their thinking. So it
Nice.
instead of guess and check, it just gives us another level of being able to elicit that thinking.
Yeah, Marilu, before you stop sharing.
Oh, sorry, I just did it.
Can you click back on that? I was gonna have you real quick show users. I know all of us. I mean, us three are obviously EquatIO experts, right? But can you do me a favor and show me? Go back to that form and click on the pupil at the top to show people what the student view would look like, and then click on that for me, and then go down to like a short answer response so we can show users how they could respond. Yeah, you know where those short answers are. There's your answer right there. Yeah. See, and then click on that. So when you guys are using EquatIO within forms, notice how Marilu clicked on that blue box that's next to your answer, and that is how you get EquatIO to open up and to be able to be used within forms. So so she could then respond to this problem. So you don't load it like the typical extension. So it's all really, really good stuff that you guys shared and really good concrete examples. So we'll move because we're limited on time. I appreciate you showing that, Marilu, because I think that some folks, they're not, they haven't used it like we have, and anyone that's viewing this after the fact want to make sure that they know how to use EquatIO inside of forms, because that does tend to be some of the feedback I receive as the product manager and getting feedback about the product is they're unfamiliar with that workflow. So the next question is how are you keeping that content engaging for students while remote learning? So we can kind of spin this to say, EquatIO, I feel like, is engaging because it allows students to be able to obviously create the math or the STEM that they want to do. But specifically, I guess, speaking, Marilu, from your district role, how can you keep that content engaging for students?
Well, I think so much of it is if the kids know they're going to get that feedback side of it and have that interaction with the teacher, that naturally lends itself to being engaging from the beginning. We've been kind of given guidelines in terms of number of hours and all those different things, and really emphasizing what is important in the courses to make sure that moving forward the kids know that. So using tools like mathspace to push the information out to students, and then linking it to what's going on in the world today. Dan, you had talked about the spreadsheets, and this the pandemic, the amount of data that's out there, and the need for making sure students can critically think about all of those different things that are out there, analyzing those scales, because we've seen some pretty crazy graphs out there where the numbers just don't make sense. And keeping it current and relevant for the kids, or looking at what's trending on Netflix and how is that going to impact all the different things, and bringing all those things in. And I think that's the key to keeping it engaging for students, using all the tools along with it, obviously, but the content helps too.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Well, one of the things that I enjoy is just the face-to-face element of it. And there was a time a couple of years ago when I was probably more reliant on tech than I needed to be, and I was losing the connect. So I tried to be more deliberate about spending more time in front of the class on the board with a marker as much as I was with the Chromebook stuff. And so now that it's all Chromebook stuff, I'm just trying to put out videos and once again take them through and show them step-by-step pieces, and be more deliberate about, this is how I want you to show your work. This is how you need to do this in EquatIO, because there's still some things they're not as familiar with as far as spacing and things like that. So I'll I'll take them through an entire example and say, here's what you need to hit, just to make sure that they know how to make things look the right way and how to express things in a way that makes sense. So keeping the video short can be difficult sometimes,
Right.
but they respond to that and they say, I might have to watch the video a couple of times,
Right.
but you've got your examples worked there and you're showing us step by step, so it makes it a little more digestible.
I always jokingly told like my first and second period teachers that I'm a much better teacher in fifth and sixth and seventh period than I, and you guys shaking your head, you can agree to that. So like, I used to think, if we could really leverage EquatIO as a flipped instruction tool and use some of those screencasting tools to be able to make like one or two really good videos. And as much as I like to be on my feet or was on my feet when I was in front of students, there's a lot of burnout standing up there and teaching the same thing over and over and over again. So if you can kind of create and think of EquatIO as a great flipped instruction tool to be able to give the kids that content front loaded and then let them, like Dan said, play the video again if they need it. You could use Khan Academy as an additional tool to send kids to if they're just not, gripping that concept that you need. So really good examples there, guys. Thank you. Let's move to the next question. So are you still grading assignments or are you focusing on other ways to evaluate learning? Marilu, obviously from the district perspective, how are your teachers handling grading and evaluating students learning from home?
I guess for a lot of students, that's been the biggest struggle in terms of worrying about integrity and all those different things, because there's lots of apps out there that'll do all the math for you.
Right.
And really kind of struggling with that. I know we've been meeting with teachers. I've had several meetings with course-specific teachers and having this discussion and really emphasizing the importance of the feedback piece and not a number, and helping students move forward based on those things. But I do know there are teachers who are using the Google Forms to gather data. There's some other tools that teachers are using to elicit information and give feedback. But I do know it's a learning curve for a lot of teachers from the traditional tests that you had where we have 75-minute periods in high school. So that's not how it's set up right now. And how are you going to be able to gather that learning? So they can do assessments. However, the emphasis is on feedback and not marks.
Right. Dan, how are you guys doing it in your district? Or are you specifically?
I specifically am grading. I'm pushing out something every day, a little, short a video slideshow, and I might push out the slideshow too, so they can just go back and look at that. And then, no more than 6 problems to do, and or a Khan Academy set, and that's usually 4. And I might give them 2 if it's similar material, adding and subtracting polynomials, something like that. I'm getting work from maybe 2/3 of my students right now. Yeah. But I'm grading it and I'm asking them to show work. And if they're not showing work, then I'm going back into Google Classroom and I'm saying resubmit.
Right.
Show me your work. Or when we first started doing this, I started covering synthetic substitution, and I said, okay, evaluate the polynomial for the variable or for the input value, and I showed them a video on doing synthetic substitution, and a lot of them just showed me plug and chug. You're sticking 2 for x into a polynomial. And I went back and I said, we're using synthetic substitution. Show me that. So for me, the important thing is, are they at least using the material that I'm pushing out to them? So grading, and so I'm not even giving them a grade on that until they show me what they're doing. I gave a test, and it was a test that I've given before. It wasn't one that I modified for distance learning. I think I need to do that. I think I definitely need to modify what I'm doing and just make it shorter and a little more digestible, because it was my standard, 89-minute block test. And I think a lot of the kids kind of burn out on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's important, obviously, to give them that feedback. I mean, I have a 7-year-old at home, and he can't wait to go into the other room and connect with his teacher. So I know that's probably not the case for all secondary, maybe level students, but for first graders, they can't wait to see their friends. And even my middle school age daughter, she loves connecting with her teacher and asking, kind of how she's doing, whether her feedback that she's getting from her teacher and feedback she's giving her teacher as to whether she's understanding the concepts is really, really important. So appreciate your answer on both of those. So next question here is, there was a question there. It's coming live. That's awesome. Am I correct that the teachers use mathspaces to create and push out lessons, and the students use the extension to interact with the lesson? So I can show this on my screen if you want. So if you want to toggle to my screen here, what I have here is a mathspace. So what Dan and Marilu were referring to is I have several mathspaces inside of my dashboard just from things that I've created over time. So the question specifically, and I don't know what grade level we're referring to, but I suppose it doesn't necessarily matter. Let's say that I want to open up something about coordinate plane practice. Actually, I was mentioning my daughter earlier. She came in and this is what she was referring back to her teacher was coordinate plane practice. So notice how I have a math space that I've already created, and then I can go over here and hit that share button. And when I hit the share button, if I'm looking for students to respond, I'm going to go here and make a copy for each person and expect a response. So notice when I click the one that says expect a response, now notice there's an asterisk after it, and that's because you need a premium license to use this. This allows the students then to reply to that math space, and then we can give that feedback that Dan and Marilu have been referring to. So notice when I click on continue, I can access this URL. And this goes towards one of our questions here towards the end of this webinar series today was how can I integrate with Google Classroom? And I know Dan's mentioned this before. So this right here is an automatic share link right into my Google Classroom. So I'm assuming those that have Google Classroom or they're a G Suite district, you're probably using some of the benefits within Google Classroom. So if I can take this link right here, I can use this link and paste it anywhere, no matter what product you're using, whether it's an LMS, whether it's another ed tech tool, another app that you use with students. I just need to get that URL one way or another to my students. For the Google Classroom piece, I can just click here. And when I click, it's going to basically streamline this right into my classroom. And I have a demo class here, and I'm going to create an assignment using this. I'm going to select go. And notice how it's going to embed that link right into Google Classroom. So I'm just going to type in demo here for sake of time, demo here for sake of time, and then I will choose my due date. We'll give them to the end of the week, optional for time. If you don't put a time, usually be midnight by that date, or 11:59, I should say. And then I can just simply click on assign, or I can click on that arrow here and assign it at a later date. I also love that you can differentiate this and have different students, submit this assignment if you're needing to make a math space for remediation, let's say. But I can just click assign here, and that'll automatically get pushed out into my classroom stream. So that's a really, really good feature about MathSpace and how Marilu and Dan were talking about giving students the opportunity to be able to use MathSpace. I'm going to flip this around then for you. If I take this link, I'm now going to go into another Google profile that I have here on my device. And I'm going to click on this link. Let's say I'm clicking on this from Google Classroom now. When I open this from Google Classroom, notice that I'm going to get my own copy of the teacher assignment. Now, you might look at this and go, hey, Louis, I don't see any difference between this and the other one. Well, the difference is this button right here. So the button that allows me to submit this back to the teacher. So I can use any of the EquatIO input tools, and I can use shapes. So let's say I need to plot 3, -2. So I am going to take this and go 3 to the right, down 2, and plot this here. And
good job,
notice,
Louis.
thank you. I'm glad I didn't miss that. And then I can go and copy, and watch this. I can paste this. And now I can easily go and plot these other two. And I am not going to do that for time's sake. This is something like this, though. So then I can then submit this back to the teacher, and I can allow notifications. And I think I got that right, although it may not submit because I don't have a premium license on that specific domain. But Marilu gave me an A, I believe, on that. So that is basically your workflow and the question that came in. So I appreciate the question. I wasn't able to really reply in the chat box because I didn't have a reply button. So I appreciate you guys putting that up on the screen and us being able to kind of show that workflow live in this session. That, unfortunately, I know we had a couple more questions here. Maybe we can get to them a little bit next week. But that's going to pretty much take us up to the halfway point of the hour. I want to, definitely, I appreciate Marilu's time and Dan's time. They really are, experts with this product. They're a part of a private, collaboration group that we have at TextHelp. They're part of our TextHelp Titans group. And I know that we have a webinar coming up tomorrow that I'm going to be hosting. So if you have, there it is right there, and it's going to be put into the chat. So I'm going to be doing a webinar tomorrow at 11 a.m. The link is going to be into the chat box. So that'll get posted right in the chat box for you. And actually, if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for the webinar. It may not be able to go in the chat. Yeah, it is in the chat box. So it is right there, text.help/. And I will tell you that this is case sensitive. So make sure, and it's actually just got posted back in that chat box for you. So if you want to copy and paste it, because it's case sensitive, that's important. So tomorrow's webinar, just so everyone's aware, is going to be the focus is going to be remote learning. We're going to talk about the LMS integrations. I'm excited to be able to tell folks at the end of this webinar, we now have MathSpace working on the iPad. And within the last week, we've now integrated with Brightspace D2L as well as Schoology. So these are all different types of integrations and things that we kind of changed our development style, if you will, and we kind of jumped onto the remote learning piece because that's what people were needing from TextHelp. And we kind of changed our development piece so people can see, the different ways to use MathSpace in a remote learning environment. To attempt to the MathSpace assignment, do students need to have EquatIO installed? The answer to that is yes. Good question, Ms. Gulati there. So yes, students need to have MathSpace installed. They're actually just going to go to equatio.texthelp.com, and it's going to ask them to authenticate if they've never been in before. So, and there's all sorts of different ways for students to authenticate, lots of different options. So hopefully that helps. But yes, students will need to log in with their credentials in order to access that MathSpace. So that is it for today. Again, I appreciate Marilu's time. Dan, you're awesome as always. So I appreciate you all joining us today. For questions, you can reach out to any of us, really. All three of us would be happy to answer any follow-up questions for you if you want to reach us on Twitter or just shoot us an email. So that is it. I appreciate it. We'll see you next week for episode 4. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.